This is part 1, the issue or event. For non-Indigenous Australians, Australia Day marks the day in 1788 when the first fleet of convict ships from Great Britain arrived at Sydney Cove. The 26th of January in Australia is now one of the most celebrated days in the Australian calendar. It's a day where Australians dress up in the nation's flag, don a pair of thongs and head to the beach or the park for a barbecue or a game of cricket. While the vast majority of Australians celebrate this day in the history of the country, there are a group of people who are not celebrating. These people are instead in mourning for the day in 1788 which saw their country invaded by Europeans, who claimed the country as their own and dispossessed them of their land. The landing at Sydney Cove marks the beginning of bitter wars, unnecessary and brutal deaths, and the continuing struggle for survival by Aboriginal people in Sydney and around Australia. Quote by Palmer, 2002, paragraph 2. For the Aboriginal people of Australia, this was a day of horror, not of celebration. Australia Day is the essence of difference within this country. While the day is portrayed around the world as the day all Australians unite as one, the individuals of the Indigenous community are reminded of the day of heartache and despair. This event and issue connects to identity at an individual level for the students in the classroom, at a community level for both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people, and at a national level for the whole country who have differing opinions on the true meaning of Australia Day. Australia Day is the day which is celebrated by most Australians every year without understanding the true meaning of the day. Uluru is portrayed as uniquely Australian, though its cultural and spiritual importance is seldom considered. Quote by Rossi, page 118 in Austin, 2005. Australia Day is at the heart of our nation's identity. Identity, then, is never a static location. It contains traces of its past and what it is to become. Quote by Rutherford, 1990, page 24, cited in Austin, 2005, page 12. Australia's national identity was formed around the supposed successful settlement of a country classed as terra nullius, a mistruth which must be acknowledged in order to obtain the true identity of Australia, inclusive of all history, black and white. This brings us to part 2, the event as curriculum. Whenever I'm preparing to teach a unit of work, I like to brainstorm about the topic. This is my brainstorm about Australia Day, Invasion Day. The topic for this module was Australia Day, Invasion Day. The year group is 5-6. We could go older, but we would have to make it a little bit more detailed. Younger age groups would be able to benefit from this activity as well, but the activity would actually have to be modified to make it less confronting for the students. The focus is to have students understand that there is more than one perspective of the meaning of Australia Day. To convey the meaning of difference in terms of Australia Day or Invasion Day, and delivery of this topic will be over a series of lessons focusing on Indigenous issues with Australia Day and the differences between Indigenous Australians and non-Indigenous Australians. These learning outcomes are taken from the WA Outcomes and Standards Framework overview. I feel that these are the most appropriate for the tasks I have set. For society and the environment, time, continuity and change level 2 understands that the passage of time creates differences in people's lives and in the environment, and that people endeavour to retain what they see as important. English, reading level 3, integrates a range of strategies to interpret and discuss relationships among ideas, information and events in written text, identifies and uses language structures, and recognises and discusses the use of symbols and stereotypes to make meaning. Introductory teaching activities. Number 1. Find out what Australia Day means to students. This can be done with a group brainstorming activity. Number 2. In groups, have students read articles selected by the teacher detailing the invasion of Australia. These can be anything as long as they have differing points of view and they're based around Australia Day. Number 3. Read the poem Our Survival Day by Raylene Campion, Appendix A. In groups, list the differences between this view of Australia Day and the one you know. Number 4. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Write a short story about how Australia Day would feel to you if you were an Indigenous person. Note, any Indigenous students will reverse this and write from a non-Indigenous point of view. This is the main activity from the topic. The task. Differences between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians mean that Australia Day is not currently a positive day for all. Imagine your group has been invited to a student conference focused on ending the rift between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians on Australia Day. Design a presentation which focuses on the idea, making Australia Day the day for all Australians. Include in your presentation the differences between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians regarding Australia Day and ways to overcome these differences. The concept of difference, apply this to the alternate views of Australia Day. How can these differences be overcome to promote a whole nation celebration on Australia Day? What needs to happen to accomplish your goal? A local Indigenous community member has been invited to the classroom to hear your proposals. Make sure your presentation has properly considered the Indigenous points of view surrounding this issue. Reflection activity. Following the main activity, I would like to have the students reflect on the deeper meaning of these activities. What did you learn about your own view of Australia Day during these activities? If white people are the dominant power in Australia, then they are at the centre of the nation's identity. Where does that leave the Indigenous Australians? What separates Indigenous people from non-Indigenous people in this country? Where do you fit along this line? How can the differences between the two groups be used to create a positive outcome? And where do you see Australia Day heading in the future?